All right, guys, we are live. I've got John Kemper here. He'll be joining me on the green screen here in a moment, and we will let some folks file in, and we will get started here with the second big severe weather event this week. We do have severe weather today as well that I have up on my screen. We'll briefly touch on that for parts of the Central Plains, and then we'll really time out the severe weather potential as we get into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. I'm more concerned about tornadoes tomorrow than I was on Sunday. Wind was the big threat on Sunday. I think, John, we ended up with 28 confirmed tornadoes, at least so far, with the system. So it wasn't like it was a complete bust in terms of tornadoes, but wind was the biggest impact with that system. I think all modes are on the table for tomorrow, but I think that there's the potential for some longer track tornadoes tomorrow. That threat is a little bit higher tomorrow than it was earlier this week, but the threat in general really covers a lot of the same areas. So let me take a look at some of the comments here, make sure that we all sound good. Looks good. Thank you all for tuning in. Guys, be sure to scan the QR code in the top left here to get a 7-day free trial of our Clarity platform. Perfect opportunity to take advantage of this as we deal with the severe weather tomorrow. It's really intended for professional use and businesses, but anybody can take a look at the Clarity platform, see if it's right for them, and get all of our updates, which I think will be crucial over the next couple of days. Let's get started here, guys. Here's the outlook for today: an enhanced risk of severe weather, including parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, including Kansas City and parts of Missouri, guys. All modes of severe weather on the table out here as well, although I do think that tomorrow's threat is bigger than today's. But you can see we do have the risk for a couple of stronger tornadoes in this yellow hatched area. This is a 10% tornado risk from the Storm Prediction Center. That's a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any point. These folks out here, as we work into tonight, will also be dealing with some hail. Could be some significant hail out here, and then wind as well. You can see maybe some significant wind up here in parts of eastern Kansas and into western parts of Missouri. But I want to talk about tomorrow. And this is the Storm Prediction Center's outlook, and then we will give our official outlook. They updated it here. If you read our post earlier this morning, we talked about the potential, I think especially on Twitter we talked about this, that we would need an upgrade to a moderate risk. Their latest midday update, they put this moderate risk, that's a 4 on a scale of 5. Kind of along the Mississippi River here, up into southwestern portions of Indiana. I still personally think that there's the risk that this could be expanded even a little bit further to the north to include areas south of I-70 up towards Bloomington and kind of Columbus, Indiana. We'll see how that is adjusted with the next update, and we'll give you our official forecast here in a moment. Let's go through some timing, and then after we go through the timing, I'm going to have John step in here, and he'll go into more details on the risks with this, some of the potential impacts, and then what to look out for in terms of schools getting out. I know some are still on spring break, but we do have outdoor events ongoing. We've got school athletic events, we've got after-school practices, whatever the case may be. He'll kind of break down what the threats for those types of after-school activities could be as we get into tomorrow. Here's a look at the simulated radar tomorrow morning. This is about 6 a.m. You can see those strong to severe storms out here still moving across parts of eastern Kansas and northern Missouri, and then the warm front up here. Some heavy rain possible, maybe some stronger storms as well, a couple of severe storms along the warm front here across northern parts of Illinois and eastern parts of Iowa, guys. As we go throughout the rest of the day, you can see tomorrow morning, this is by about 8, 9 o'clock, we could be dealing with a couple of scattered showers and storms here across central Indiana. But I think the key to this forecast, as we go throughout the rest of the day, we're pretty much clear. And some of the high-resolution data, the midday run, trying to indicate some clearing. And I think that's very important to get this instability up a little bit further to the north with this system. We have a lot of wind energy. And I'm sure something John will maybe talk a little bit about later is the combination of the wind energy and the instability and how critical that combination will be as we work into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. So this is by the time we get to about 2 to 3 p.m., guys. What you're going to notice, we will start to see some organization here of the line back out in parts of Missouri and Arkansas. Note a couple of these cells developing out ahead of the main line. Those could be discrete or supercellular in nature. which increases the tornado risk, and I think that we could see some of that around the Ohio Valley as well. This is by the time we work into about 4 or 5 o'clock. We will need to keep an eye 4, 5, 6 o'clock for maybe a couple of discrete cells to form out ahead of this main line as well. We'll zoom in here so maybe we can take a little bit of a closer look here in the Ohio Valley. What we will start to notice as these storms approach will be some intensification. So 6 p.m. as we work towards about 7 and 8 o'clock, a couple of things that I want to draw your attention to. If we scroll down here a little bit, what you're going to notice, these pink lines, these pink circles that you see, that's indicating rotation tracks and the potential for stronger tornadoes. When you see that type of a signal, it indicates the risk that we have a lot of upward motion, we have a lot of rotation. When I see this type of a signal that you see down here across western Kentucky, a little bit into southwestern Indiana as well, that has my attention for potential longer tracked and stronger tornadoes. Further up to the north, again, this is at about 8 or 9 o'clock, guys, we have strong to severe storms moving all across the state of Indiana. I think some embedded supercells will be possible within this line. You can also see out ahead of the main line some of these discrete cells. Any of these discrete cells that can form will have the potential to drop a tornado, and you can see some of those all the way out into eastern Indiana, central Ohio, southern Indiana. So really I would say anytime after 4 or 5 o'clock especially, it's going to be game on for central Indiana and especially areas further east as well the later into the evening that we go. So 8, 9 o'clock here, as we work towards about 10 and 11, you can still see down here some of these embedded supercells, some of the rotation with these pink circles that you can see. But by this point, the strongest storms and the severe weather kind of moving for areas along the Ohio River. And then what starts to happen, our secondary threat sets up, which is a stalled out frontal boundary, which will produce flash flooding potential and be the start of what will be excessive rains for the Ohio River Valley as we work into the weekend. With all that, oh, here's a look at the rain. We'll come back to that here in a second, but click around. You can see some areas in this region could be getting 8 to 12 inches plus of rainfall over the next 7 days. But I want to highlight this. Here's our severe weather outlook. Highly likely to see severe weather if you were in this red area. That includes Indianapolis, that includes Bloomington, it includes Evansville, Louisville, Bowling Green, down towards all the way down into Tennessee, Nashville, and the Memphis area. And then in terms of tornadoes, here's a look at the threat areas. We're going to 4 on a scale of 5. I think that this area could see a couple of longer tracked tornadoes, but 3, 2, 1, still could be a couple of tornadoes in these areas as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to John. He's going to talk a little bit more about these other areas as well. You're at a 3 out of 5. What does that mean and what to expect as we get into the evening hours? So John, give it to you here for a second, and I will take a look at some of the comments, and then we'll try to answer some of the comments here for you all and see how we can help.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. So just want to kind of to start here, Brett makes an excellent point here. So for those of you that are seeing the ratings here, 1, 2, 3, 4, what do those mean? So what, in all honesty, if you are still even in these areas that are in orange and yellow, that still means that you can see a few tornadoes, guys. It's just the intensity and in some ways the coverage that we're going to be mostly monitoring here. So to start, especially for those of you in this red area here, all the way up towards Bloomington and Indianapolis, this is somewhat of a two-sided risk, I would say. So first and foremost, Brett showed you that big line of thunderstorms that's going to be pushing from the west to the east here. And that, of course, is going to have the greater damaging wind threat and a tornado threat. But another thing that we are concerned about here is I would say, all the way more towards that Tennessee-Kentucky border area, even as we get towards the Indianapolis-Dayton, I would say as far north as Fort Wayne, any discrete supercells that we can see potentially develop, on radar here, especially as we get beyond 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern time frame, that would also be a threat for a few stronger tornadoes that can develop as well here. So in terms of those of you thinking about timing for schools at this point, I would say for the most part, as cells develop, at least what we're seeing right now, the majority of those risks should hold off if you're in central Indiana, western Ohio, central Kentucky until after 4 p.m. Eastern time. But for those of you here a little bit further towards the west here, central Illinois, Effingham, Vandalia, closer to that I-70 corridor here from St. Louis all the way towards Terre Haute. I would say these locations, we need to watch for some of those earlier risks of storms that can fire up and be capable of producing those tornadoes and damaging wind threat. Now, something else I want to point out here too with this risk map here as well, I do think that for those of you that are more northwestern Ohio, northern Indiana, I do think that in all honesty, the risk for tornadoes is a little bit lower, but it would not surprise me to see once we get into the late afternoon here as these storms develop, a few tornado warnings being issued. So definitely something to monitor. And I do think if there's good news here, far eastern Kentucky, eastern Ohio here, you can see as this line of storms continues to push further to the east, we're looking at a level 1. I think that's going to be more of a lower risk in all honesty here. So I'm going to go ahead and flip back here real quick to our main severe risks map here, and something else I want to address as well. I know that for a lot of these events where it may seem that we're really focused on tornadoes, but you know, as many of you experienced here, especially for those of you in northern Indiana, talking to some clients and some other friends up here, many of you are still cleaning up from those storms. We saw wind gusts of, if I believe, Brett, up to 70, 80 miles per hour up in far northern Indiana. So there's even some that are still without power. I do think, unfortunately, that as this line organizes again, once again across central Illinois, and guys, we'll go back through here the timing in just a second as well, but once this activity forms, I do think for those of you in the likely zone, it's not just a few tornadoes that we're talking about here, it's those unfortunately widespread damaging wind risks of I think 70 miles per hour and large hail that are also going to be in play as well. I do think, again, something else here to keep in mind is with this more red or highly likely risk here, you can see I was kind of covering it up there. What we mean by that here, guys, is in general the risk is going to be more widespread. It's not necessarily saying that one hazard is going to be more favored versus another necessarily, but just in general, all of the severe threats, large hail, damaging winds, tornadoes, this is going to be the zone that we especially need to watch as we get into tomorrow here.
John, a quick question that I think is a good one.
Absolutely.
If we get more sunshine tomorrow, if we get more sunshine, if things clear out some of that morning convection a little bit faster, could the tornado threat, the 4 to 5, could it come a little bit further north, more towards I-70?
I definitely think that's a possibility, and I think that one of the factors of this forecast that we're going to have to keep in mind is that there are going to be some showers and thunderstorms that Brett showed here that can end up impacting our area in central Indiana, northern Indiana, that would likely leave behind some clouds. If those can clear out pretty quickly and we start seeing sun, say around 12 p.m., 1 p.m., get a good 3 to 4 hours of that daytime heating, that is something that's going to be a cause for concern, especially with tornado risks. In fact, I was talking with Matt Griffin, one of our other forecasters, about this earlier this morning, and I would say at this point, if we see better evidence that the sun can come out more, I would not be opposed, and again, we've got a little bit of a ways to go here, but I would not be opposed to extending that red area a little bit more to the north to include portions of Indianapolis, even as far east as Richmond and Dayton. So Richmond, Indiana, Dayton, Ohio here as well. So that's definitely going to be a risk that we're going to have to watch. One other thing that I also do want to bring up here, this is another product that we have with the HRRR. It in general here is, I'm going to have it load here, shows what we call updraft helicity, and that's just a fancy way of saying where some of that core rotation is going to be, where we can see some of those embedded supercells along the main line that pushes in from the west to the east here. And right now, as you can see, in general, as I take this all the way out through the entire period here, there is plenty of evidence. And again, this is not, don't take this verbatim in the sense that wherever you see a blue or yellow track here, that's where a tornadic storm is going to be. This just shows where more than likely we're going to see multiple areas of embedded rotation across the area. A little bit more of a stronger signal down here in western Kentucky, just to the south of Evansville. Again, that's more of that red area that we've been watching here a little bit more closely. But as we just continue to watch this system as a whole pushing in, even if we don't see any of those discrete cells forming ahead of the main line, there's still going to be little embedded vortices that can produce those tornadoes in addition to damaging wind gusts here. One other thing I do want to point out here, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to the simulated radar here and push this back a little bit more just for all of us to see here, especially as we get more into the afternoon hours. Here we go. Yeah, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m. here, and right here, perfect. I do think that there is some potential that, again, especially for those of you across portions of central Illinois right here, so Decatur towards Springfield down to St. Louis, we might even be able to see storm threats come out into play a little bit earlier here as a result. So once that happens, if we can see that become a risk, those are the areas, especially for after-school activities, western Indiana, eastern Illinois, that need to watch for that earlier risk here. And then as Brett kind of already mentioned here, just to highlight what I was talking about, as we get closer towards around the 6 p.m., 7 p.m. time frame, if we don't see any of these discrete cells that can form ahead of the line, so towards Indiana, western Ohio, this would be the timing for when we can start to see more of that main line of thunderstorms start to work into the area. So again, this is something that as we continue to send out updates, make sure to pay attention to some timing changes. We're still over 24 hours out here before the main wave starts to hit our area here. And this is also a perfect time for you as well, something that once we get off this live stream, I'm going to go do is I'm going to go ahead and get on our Clarity platform and start sending more updates to clients, making sure they're aware. And that's something that you can go ahead and scan that QR code right there, a free 7-day trial. You know, that's for anyone to go ahead and use it, scan it, go ahead and get it set up. This is a perfect time to go ahead and use this here.
Yeah, and we're still getting a lot of timing questions. I think just to sum it all up, and you can tell me if you disagree, John.
Sure.
You know, to the western parts of the state, if we get some of those discrete cells as early as 3 to 4 o'clock. For central Indiana, you know, I think that in general, from the very start of the threat to the end, it's kind of that 4 to 10 p.m. time frame is the window. Now, probably if we had to pick the worst of it, the core of it, what'd you say, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, somewhere in there?
Yeah, and that's really just shown right here too. This would be, and again, this is simulated here, so there might be some adjustments, but 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and then 10 p.m. here. And you can see that line, Brett, stretching all the way up from Detroit to Fort Wayne here, all the way down towards Evansville, Memphis, Tennessee, even further to the south here towards the Arklatex region. So it's a very big, robust system that's going to be pushing across the area here. But I guess, Brett, if there's a little bit more of a good scenario here that we can keep an eye on is once we have a line that develops, it is a little bit easier for us to time. So as you're checking out our live streams tomorrow as well, we'll show you some of our nowcast graphics that detail some of that fine tuning as to when the storms are approaching and when they're going to work into your area here. Another question that a lot of times we'll start to get as well is that, you know, what type of watch is going to be issued? When is the watch going to be issued? Brett, I don't know about you, but it wouldn't surprise me that for Indiana, Kentucky, Southern Illinois, Southwestern Ohio, it's probably going to be a tornado watch issued at some point between 2 to 4 p.m. Again, all that means is that just means that conditions warrants the potential for tornadoes and any type of storm that can develop. So that doesn't mean that if you're automatically issued under tornado watch that something's going to happen immediately. It just means that as we're watching those storms develop and continuing to push further to the east here, that'll be just something that we'll have to keep an eye on here as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, you know, something else to watch, John, is how fast do those discrete cells get out? How fast does this congeal into more of a line? Are there embedded supercells or not? I think that's kind of the biggest question further to the north, where we're in that 3 out of 5 instead of 4 out of 5
Absolutely.
in terms of the tornado threat. I think the highest likelihood of those embedded supercells, and again, some longer track tornadoes, is just to our south. But as you mentioned earlier, if we can get that instability to move in a little bit faster, if we can get those discrete cells to start to pop out, that 4 will need to come further to the north.
Yes, absolutely here. And again, just a simulated radar, but you can look right here. This would be right around 9 p.m., so a little bit more towards the 3-2 zone here. You're stretching all the way here, a little bit more towards the central Ohio from Columbus, further down all the way here towards Richmond, Indiana, stretching even towards Cleveland. Even if we can get a row of these discrete supercells to develop here, that would also be an additional risk for a few tornadoes that can pop out ahead. So again, I want to emphasize this this risk map again here. Even if you're not in the main number 4 zone, that doesn't mean that you can't see tornadoes. It doesn't mean that you're not going to see the majority of the severe weather. All it means is the areas that we're at least most favoring to see the majority of the tornadoes are still going to be in this zone here. So definitely something we'll have to continue to keep an eye on here, Brett, as we walk through this.
So some people are saying the sirens are going off right now in Whiteland and Franklin. It's sunny, so I don't know why they would be going off. I was just about to say, we're getting questions about the flooding potential. And John, I went through yesterday and I compared this to a historical event, which was late April of 2011.
Yeah.
And we will be rivaling rainfall totals of that event in pretty much this exact same region. What I'm very concerned about with this, John, is that the heaviest corridor is right along the river, the Mississippi River and the Ohio River. I'm very concerned about river flooding. I'm very concerned about flash flooding. This is a multi-day extreme rainfall event that will be setting up, starting with these storms, but continuing on and off really all the way through Sunday.
Absolutely, and just to highlight that here, let's start off with our future rain forecast, 7-day totals here from Clarity. You know, one of the things that just when I was looking at this last night that kind of shocked me, this is our legend here down here. You can see in general where we have those darker reds towards the pink, that's 10 inches. We may have to even explore expanding that legend a little bit here, just given how much rain we're actually forecasting here, especially as we get into, I would say, tomorrow all the way through Saturday and Sunday as the system sets up. So in general, there's going to be, guys, a widespread swath, more than likely, of 8 to 12 inches of rain. And to put that in perspective here, that is more than just historic flooding. It's catastrophic. It's cause for concern. And remember here as well with how flooding works in addition to river flooding, all of the rain that you're seeing to the north here towards I-70, you know, that's still looking at least 2 to 4 inches of rain. All of that's going to flow down into the Ohio River, into the Mississippi. This would be an event that would likely be incredibly difficult to recover from, especially for those locations that are along the river fronts over the next week or two. For many of our ag clients that we've been talking about this as well, it's going to delay some plantings. But more importantly here as well, aside from the river flooding threat, when you're dealing with the system here, and I'm just going to quickly cycle back to our favored weather model here. Notice what happens as we get a little bit more into from 9 p.m. Wednesday night, and I'll take this all the way out into Thursday morning here towards 6, 7 a.m. The system, while the worst of the storms start to tug more to the east here towards the Appalachian areas, we start to see more showers and thunderstorms developing across Arkansas and Missouri that are going to push to the northeast as well. So what that's going to do is that's going to keep continuous moderate to heavy rainfall over these areas for almost a 72 to 96 hour period. So even locations that are not necessarily impacted by the river necessarily, flash flooding risks are definitely going to increase. And there's more than likely going to be a lot of those issued on your phones. That is one thing in addition to tornado warnings that for those of you that have those severe weather phone notifications turned on, and of course the Clarity application platform as well, we notify those of you for your specific location so that you can be prepared, especially as you're commuting to work in the dark. Don't see the water there. That can definitely cause some danger to be in play here as well. So,
yeah, I've got to, John, address a comment.
Copy that.
From somebody named Todd,
okay,
who says, "Quit scaring people. It's springtime." Guys, we're trying to keep people safe and prepare people. So knock it off.
Yeah,
that's the nicest way I can put it, guys. We're not trying to scare people. We're trying to give you all an updated, detailed analysis of what to expect. We're never going to put something out that we don't believe in, and that we spend so much time here trying to get the forecast right. It's not always going to be 100% perfect, but I can tell you right now that this type of a setup, these multi-day severe weather events, this flooding, it does not happen all that often, and it needs to be taken seriously. 5 people were killed in the storms on Sunday, 3 in Michigan and 2 in Indiana, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. And so we're not scaring people, we're trying to keep people safe. I know the vast majority of you are, telling Todd that it's better to be prepared, and I thank you for it. But just know that our intentions are the absolute best here.
Yeah, guys, I'll echo that from Brett here. We have this tornado threat level map. If for some reason we don't see any tornadoes tomorrow, Brett, I don't know about you, I'd be okay with that. That's okay.
I would be okay with that. Yes.
That'd be good.
Yes, I hope that there are not tornadoes.
Yeah.
I hope that nobody, loses their homes or God forbid, gets injured. That's not what we want. We're here trying to prevent that. So, regardless, this needs to be taken seriously. Again, I'm more concerned about the tornado threat tomorrow than I was on Sunday. I think maybe the wind threat, the higher end wind threat's not quite as intense tomorrow as it was on Sunday. We had 95-mile-per-hour wind gusts in Michigan, which is insane. Don't get me wrong, there can still be damaging winds and some very large hail, but I think that the tornado threat's a little bit higher compared to the wind threat versus on Sunday.
Absolutely. And Brett, real quick, one thing I do want to mention here as well, I think I saw a couple questions pop up for this. This is 7 a.m. tomorrow morning here, when we're still likely, for those of you a little bit further to the west here, just towards the Quad Cities, all the way down towards Kansas City here. This storm line, as this pushes to the east, likely still going to be a few strong or severe gusts. But for those of you in northern Illinois, northern Indiana here, A lot of heavy rain's going to be pushing to the northeast here, even towards, it wouldn't surprise me, Brett, to see a few thunderstorms pop up towards Indianapolis and even as far south as Bloomington. That's a risk that Matt
Sure.
brought up here as well. I do think that while I'm not seeing a lot of severe risks, wouldn't surprise me to see some of you waking up to some hail as this activity pushes to the east, just given how strong the jet system is as it pushes to the east. But the main reason I wanted to address this is for those of you in northern Indiana, even though you're in a little bit of a lower risk and you're seeing these showers and thunderstorms earlier in the morning, just because you're seeing that and seeing clouds, I want to reemphasize, I do not think that you guys are going to be out of the picture here for the severe risk. I definitely think that there's just going to be enough of this dry air and wind slot to push these storms away, and as a result, allow for that sunshine to kind of destabilize the atmosphere and allow for some additional severe weather. So again, I'm not saying that, well, if you don't see sun tomorrow, the threat's over for you, you're not going to see anything. We just believe that if you see the sun tomorrow, that's going to be a very good indication that the atmosphere is going to destabilize further, and more than likely, that's going to enhance the risk that we're already seeing. So just wanted to go ahead and clarify that here.
John, with all that being said, I'm going to grab this from you
Absolutely.
real quick. Step back into the picture. I want to be sure here, go to bamwx.com, click on Get Instant Access, and you can go here and click and start a free trial and get all of this information more detailed. I know a lot of people want specifics for their exact location. You want timing graphics and whatnot, and there are a lot of you all over the place. Woo! Trying to throw my mouse pad here. That would be good if I broke the camera. Sign up for the free trial. It's great, especially for businesses. Free weather apps not going to be able to give you the detail that our meteorologists like John are throwing out in the Clarity platform. And so again, 7-day free trial, no credit card required. So scan that QR code, go to bamwx.com and get started there. I also want to be sure to give a shout out real quick. Again, here's the, let me go back to our tornado outlook for those of you just hopping in. Want to be sure to give a shout out to 811 DIG with more severe weather in the cards tomorrow. Want to be sure that as you're cleaning up from damage, there were a ton of wind reports, power lines down with Sunday's system across the northern half of the state especially, that you're calling that 811 number before you do any digging or any repairs around your house to make sure that you're not hitting gas lines. And so also, if you see power lines, be sure to report it. Don't go near the power lines. And so continuing with that 811 DIG safety initiative, really appreciate working with them on that. Again, here is the tornado threat map. 4, 3, 2, 1 on a scale of 5. Down here in the corner, we have kind of what each threat level means. If you want a more high-res view of that, you can go to our Facebook page and take a look at that. It explains exactly what each threat level means. You can see in the higher threat levels, we have areas like Bowling Green, Louisville, Evansville, and Bloomington, Indiana. I also, real quick, before we go, and then I'll look at a couple of questions, and we'll sign off. We'll have more updates throughout the evening and, of course, throughout the day tomorrow. I want to be sure to give a shout out to the Storm Cancer 5K. I don't know if you all were watching on Sunday morning, but our dear friend Michael, who actually finally did make it to Florida, his flight was canceled, but he did make it finally, will be wearing a Superman costume if we can get 500 walkers and runners for the Storm Cancer 5K. And so I'll have Hope or John, can one of you throw the link in the comment for the 5K? You can sign up. Still need some additional sponsors as well. We're trying to get to this $50,000 goal. We're almost halfway there. So if you want your business to get a shout out on our social media pages, to be highlighted on the shirts, the shirt deadline was extended to 2 weeks. So we'd love to work with you and see you out at the 5K. With that being said, again, here's the rain forecast. Click around again, 8 to 12 inches of rain, just crazy amounts of rain expected across this region. Even for Indy, if we zoom all the way into Indy, you can see here we're still talking about 4 to 6 inches of rain, which is kind of crazy. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions here that I can see. Could the moderate risk be extended into Fort Wayne? I don't think that it'll go that far north, no. I don't think that it'll go that far north. I think that's just too far out of the greatest instability. Let's see here, guys. Timing in general, 4 to 10 p.m. across the state. Maybe a little bit later, southeast Indiana, it could extend a little bit later as the boundary stalls out, but especially for central Indiana, Western Ohio, Eastern Illinois, kind of that 4 to 10 p.m. time frame, maybe as early as 3 and far Western Indiana, Illinois, if we can get some of those discrete cells to develop. Let's see here. Is there an individual Clarity app? We've gotten that question a lot lately. Right now, we just have the Pro subscription. It's designed for business decisions. It's designed for professionals. It's designed for schools that are trying to make high cost or safety decisions. However, anybody can try it out for free for 7 days, and I would highly encourage you to do so. Or if you know somebody that could use help making decisions around weather, tag them, and we can certainly help them out. And we'll always be keeping you all updated here as well. And so even though we don't have an individual plane right now, we are here to help you out. Let's see here. Any other questions? One of the weather apps that I use, say Fort Wayne is supposed to have rain in the morning. Yeah, I think that Fort Wayne will likely have some rain, maybe some storms tomorrow morning. That's not the main wave. That's kind of the first push of rain along the warm front before the main line comes in the evening. Could the moderate risk be expanded into Dayton, Ohio? I think you mentioned that it could.
Yeah, that wouldn't, if we can see enough of a clearing form and we can see those cells fire off more towards central Indiana and as they mature and push east, I definitely can see. It would definitely, I would describe it as a conditional threat, meaning there's a certain set of things that have to happen, like the AM activity clearing out on schedule. But sure, I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and northern Kentucky could also be expanded into the moderate. I think that's possible, especially, I think Louisville's just south or just east of it right now. It's close, if I'm remembering correctly, but I wouldn't be shocked if this area in here gets added into the SPC's moderate. Let's see, can you elaborate on Bloomington being in the red, being discussed, seeing conflicting reports, but trust BAM the most? Well, first of all, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, our outlook right now is just a tick further north compared to the Storm Prediction Centers, based off of what we're seeing with some of the rotation tracks, what we're seeing with some of the instability. There's a ton of spin in the atmosphere. We're just trying to stay ahead of potential trends. So we are a little bit further north in the Storm Prediction Center right now with our outlook. Let's see here. All right, guys. All right, guys, with all that being said, again, here's our tornado outlook. I'll go back over here for a second. Here's the overall severe weather threat. Red area, highly likely to see some kind of severe weather in here, whether it's hail, tornadoes, or wind. And then likely still even in this orange area, and then becomes a little bit more scattered, the yellow and the green areas. We'll have more updates coming over the next 24 plus hours, and I would expect to be seeing a lot of John and I tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. I think it's going to be a very busy afternoon. Guys, we'll keep you updated. Stay safe, and we will chat soon.
Thank you all.